I wanted to read you some little testimonials about acupressure, because it really can be quite a phenomenal way for women to manage pain in labor, and also to help the uterus do her job properly. So one says, I found using acupressure during labor brilliant. Having used acupressure, I wouldn't even consider being in labor without it. The difference was amazing. I felt a lot calmer and able to cope and much more relaxed. It was really good for me to have my partner so closely involved with each contraction. I felt connected and supported. Acupressure helped me to stay focused and calm. Acupressure is safe, effective, natural, and I was in control, an ideal pain management technique. And then this is from a dad. At first, I was very cynical about acupressure's ability to relieve the pain of childbirth. But as soon as my partner's contractions began, it was obvious that this was really effective. She almost seemed to enjoy the contractions as long as I was pressing very hard indeed on the right spots and not letting up for an instant. This was also the ideal way for me to feel really involved in the birth and not get too panicky. We had a trouble-free, doctor-free labor and birth, and we now have a beautiful, healthy, happy son. I'd recommend acupressure to anyone having a baby. And another one, when I went into labor with my second child, I used the acupressure points thinking they would take the edge off the pain at least. It wasn't until I had a contraction while my husband was loading the car that I realized just how effective they were. They halved the pain and allowed me to feel more in control of things. It was easier to learn them and meant my husband got to do something very useful during the birth. The labor felt much quicker since the contractions didn't feel as bad as the first labor right up to transition, which meant I only used the acupressure points and didn't need any other pain relief. So you can see these ladies, and this dad really did find acupressure powerful. So there's a module on acupressure in your YogaBirthing Bootcamp. And I thought I'd first of all just take you through 3 different techniques that you can use that are not so much for when you're in labor or wanting to start labor, but can be used anytime through your pregnancy and are great in the beginning stages of your labor. So another thing, acupressure kind of works with the whole Gait theory of pain. So the Gait theory of pain is that whole theory that the brain can't focus completely on 2 things at the same time. So if you are closing the gate to the sensations of your uterus and maybe tension around those uterine muscles and opening the gate to some other stimulation, so in this case, the acupressure, then the gate on focusing on your uterine contractions will close a little bit, yeah? So you sort of are allowing the brain to focus on something else. And this is the same for vocal toning, for massage, for a TENS machine, for movement, for all of the other techniques that we talk about in the YogaBirthing Bootcamp. They're also under the umbrella of this Gait theory of pain. So acupressure, it helps for the body to just operate more efficiently. Acupressure points can be amazing just to lift endorphins. So even in an induced birth, they can help to get some natural endorphins starting to be stimulated. A very powerful way of blocking pain receptors, as I said from those testimonials. They can increase the efficiency of the contractions, which is something that we really want, especially, I've talked before about many women have a natural plateau in labor. About half of people going through labor will have a point in their labor where contractions start to slow down and become less efficient and maybe even stop. So acupressure points and stimulation can help things just to re-escalate again. And yeah, like I said, a dramatic reduction in pain perception. So there's also some acupressure points that can just help to stimulate that parasympathetic nervous system. So we have 2 nervous systems as part of the automatic nervous system. One is the fight and flight. And when we're in fight and flight, that's when the endorphins and the oxytocin don't get stimulated naturally. And when we're in the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest nervous system, it's kind of what it says on the tin, you know, if you're in rest and digest, that is when that relaxation response allows the natural endorphins, the natural oxytocin to be stimulated. And that's where you want to be when you are in labor, because really only when we're in that state can we feel relaxed enough for our body to be opening up for birth. So there are some And the feet are, because they're just so covered in receptors, they're amazing. And also your partners can get to your feet very easily. So no matter what position you're in, if you're on all fours or leaning against a birthing ball, for example, or lying down on a bed, there's a way that your partner can get to your feet. So one thing which is really nice to have done to you, and actually I suggest you start asking your partners to do this for you now while you are in your pregnancy still, is just to have your feet out. So you might be lying down in bed, propped, have your feet out, and what your partner does is they stand at the end of the bed, or maybe they're sitting down on a chair so that you can they can have your feet in their hands. They hold onto your feet like that, and you just rest your legs you rest your feet into their hands, and they just gently traction, very, very gently traction. So gently, slightly pull your feet towards them and just take the weight of your feet in their hands, like so. And it feels lovely. It feels really, really nice and relaxing. You get this instant kind of like, oh, sensation. And then if they hold the feet, so sort of hold the top of them like that, and just gentle but relatively firm, even pressure, holding onto the feet like that. And then they can just hold, from underneath as well, taking the weight of the feet, holding them, changing the position of the hands. And that's called basing. And basically the reason it's called basing is because you are dropped down from your head into your feet, and quite quickly, especially if you combine it with some buzzy bee breath, that which is also very basing. So if you're doing a buzzy bee breath and you're having somebody just hold onto your feet, maybe while you lie in bed, it's really a very quick way to get into that rest and digest state. Great if you have had a bit of a fright or feeling a bit nervous, a little bit upset. So that's basing. So another one is this is a good one for baby as well. So remember this for once your baby is born. The point here between the pink bit of your foot and the white bit of your foot, right bang in the center of your foot here, this is an acupressure point. There we go, right there. So you take your thumb and you massage into it quite firmly in there. This will not stimulate labor. It doesn't do anything like that, but it does stimulate that parasympathetic nervous system. So if you were to have a fright, say you were to have a fall, and you were like, oh my goodness, you're in a state of shock, this is the point that you would want to stimulate, and you'd want to be saying to baby, I'm safe, I'm okay, you are safe, you're okay. And you just stimulate this point again at the same time as doing some of the buzzy bee breath to calm everything right down. So this is it's a very soothing point. It can also soothe a baby. So if you got your baby upset, just gentle massage into this point can be very calming for their central nervous system too. So this is called K1, and it's in your YogaBirthing module on acupressure. So that's that one there. And then the last one just for when you're in labor, when you're pregnant, but also when you're in labor, is to work along the arch of the foot, which is stimulating, like it's the same as your spine. So it's like you're stimulating your spine, and you get your partner to do this. They take the heel of their hand. So you'll be lying down like a queen, just having a nice relax, and they rub the side, they saw along the side of your foot, along that ridge on the edge, that spinal part of your foot. This, like I said, it matches the spine of the body. They rub up and down it, which again is stimulating the parasympathetic nervous system. So our spine, all the nerves of the body connect into the spine. So this is almost like a reset button. You're just kind of rubbing up and down. And so this is called chafing. And again, it can just be incredibly relaxing to have somebody rub the inside of that arch of your foot here. So those three, I'm not going to start labor. There's no issue with doing them while you're pregnant. But the next ones I'm going to show you, you don't want to be doing these, at least you could practice them a little bit, but you don't want to be doing them much until you are in labor. So the first one, and the one that is probably most known about is Spleen Six. And I've got a black pen here. I suggest that you have a whiteboard pen in your birthing bag, or where you're planning to birth, and your partner or you just sort of puts a dot on your leg in these different points, so that they can go straight there, so they're not having to think about where to go. So this one is 3 finger widths, so 3 centimeters, 3 finger widths up from your ankle bone, straight up from your ankle bone here. Now you can try this on yourself now. We'll do a little massage. It's not going to stimulate labor now at all. So it's where we can find the feeling that we're looking for, is a sort of a nervy, numb, quite a painful feeling actually. So it's 3 finger widths up, and then just above the top finger, if you massage, wow, I can feel it straight away. It's like an electric pulse that goes down the foot. So just see if you can find that one and have a little massage. You massage quite firmly, and you massage for about 10 minutes at a time. So for quite a long time, your partner would be massaging one side and then have a few minutes break and then massage the other side. This acupressure point can help the cervix to efface. So if you are only 1 or 2 centimeters and you've been there for a while, this acupressure point can just help the cervix start to efface more. It is said to help induce labor, but after kind of 40 weeks. So once you are probably near labor anyway, this point can help induce labor. None of these points are going to help you go into labor if your body's not, at least a little bit ready to go into labor. So this point here, you'll know it when you touch it, because it really is a little bit zingy. I'll say zingy it's not actually a technical term, but hopefully you know what I mean by that. It's quite a nervy, uncomfortable feeling. However, in labor, it can feel amazing to have this kind of almost painful counter pressure. So that one is Spleen Six.
Sorry, how do you know if you found it?
So you will feel, so try it now. So here's your ankle bone. I hope you can see my ankle here.
Yeah.
So 3 fingers just above the ankle, 3 fingers up, and then where your 3rd finger is, just kind of at the top of where your 3rd finger is, if you massage into quite hard with a fingertip, you should feel like, ow, that hurts. It doesn't feel comfortable at all. It's quite a tender point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's where it is basically, and you can tell you've got the right place when you feel that's like, oh, tenderness. So the other one here, I've just put a black point here already, is just under your ankle bone, right here. So for me, you can see it's just flat because I'm not pregnant. But when you're pregnant and the closer you become to going into labor, under the ankle bone becomes really quite puffy. So if you look at your own ankles now, you'll probably find that under there looks quite puffy. Can you see that? Yeah. Just under that bit there. So when the uterus is really feeling quite ripe, it really looks very puffy. It's almost like a little pressure point. And that's exactly what you use it for. So I'm just going to put a little black dot there now, even though I don't have a pressure point. This can feel amazing to have somebody pressing quite firmly into this point as you are having a contraction. So as the contraction, it's like a wave, as it starts to build and build and build and build, your partner will be pressing harder and harder and harder into this button, this button of puffiness, if you like, pushing hard here and then easing off as your contraction is easing off as well. And again, ideal if you're also vocal toning through that contraction, so building the that low vibrational sound that you're creating. As the contraction starts to peak, you're going louder and then softening off as the contraction fades away. So that one, I found this one really useful in my 2nd birth. So it was towards still in relatively early parts of labor, and I was lying down, and my husband was just on a chair at the end of the bed, and my feet were sort of in his reach. So this was a point where I didn't feel like moving around. I was, just was resting. And every time I started having contraction, he was just sort of, had my feet like that, and he was just pushing harder and harder and harder and harder, and then releasing. And it helped so much. It really did.
Do they do both? Sorry, Linda. Do they do both feet at once?
Yes, both feet at once for that one. Yep. So for the Spleen Six, it's kind of hard to do both feet at once. So the suggestion is you just do one, give it a rest for a few minutes, and then do the other side. But with this, the puffy point, the point of the uterus, you can be pushing both and then releasing. And it might be that you're on all fours. If you're on all fours, your partner could be behind you, pressing into the puffy points. So these are just quite useful to have these points all around your ankle and quite accessible, going from one to the other. So the other point, which is a little bit like Spleen Six, so it's also a powerful stimulant for the uterus, is, and it's a bit easier to get to if you're on all fours, is this just literally on the Achilles, and you're pinching either side of your ankle. So just kind of below the ankle bone on the back here, pinching into the Achilles there. And again, if you do it to yourself now, it's quite uncomfortable. It doesn't feel great. So have a little play with that, and that just pinching it hard, releasing, pinching it hard, releasing. That one is used less, maybe because I don't know, that one just seems to be used less than this Spleen Six. But it might be that that's a little bit more accessible. And all of these is worth practicing with your partner beforehand. So right there is another one, and that's a very similar, has similar attributes to that Spleen Six one there. So those are three that are sort of around the ankle. Another one is, it's called BL60, and it's on your own hand. So this is one that you guys can control very easily. Really nice if you're having an examination. Maybe you're lying on your left-hand side and your partner's busy holding your leg up so you can have your examination, or maybe even birthing. So you can be doing this one. You just take the webbing between your forefinger and your thumb here, and you massage quite firmly again, massage and pinch in there. So again, it might be worth just putting a dot there just to remind you that that point is there. And yes, you're kind of pushing in there. And this one and the Achilles tendon one, some people use ice on these points, literally get ice and push the ice into these points. So I've not tried this, but I'm just putting it out there that having ice on these points can apparently be quite nice. Yes, so both of these ones just promote labor, and they can really ease pain. So it's a nice one for you guys to have accessible for you, maybe in the beginning parts of labor, especially if you're transitioning into hospital, being able to press down and into this area as your vocal toning, maybe doing the buzzy breath, or just doing your Ujjayi breathing at the beginning part of your labor, and then pressing into this as the contractions start to build. Also, I was just reading my notes here. It's very useful when you get to the point where you are fully dilated, and if you haven't, if you haven't had such a rush of energy that you're still tired, this can help if you're very tired, but you do need to be pushing, or you do need to be active. So this can just help you with that extra bit of energy. Also, the other point I've made here is if your waters have broken and labor needs to commence, so your waters have already broken, you're already, in maybe that early part of labor, and you really need to get things moving, this one can be useful to be used. I would always use it in conjunction with that Spleen Six. So Spleen Six is kind of like the key one. And then this one you could use alongside if you're just wanting to get things going after your waters have broken. Okay, so the other one I wanted to show you is actually on the back of the pelvis. So this one can be really great for your partners to do when you're standing up, especially if you're leaning over the bed or you're leaning against the wall and you're doing that kind of draping with your bottom slightly behind you and your forehead's you're getting a bit of pressure here, so you're getting that lovely sense of relaxation just pouring down through the body. Bottom's nice and exposed. And what you're doing is you're working around the sacrum. So here's the sacrum. The sacrum pull is the triangular bone between both sides of the pelvis, and it's the sacrum that lifts. The tailbone's at the bottom of the sacrum. It's the sacrum that lifts up. So I'm just going to grab my pelvis so I can show you this. Here's my pelvis. Okay, so this is the sacrum here, and when you are ready to birth, the tailbone lifts, and this is called nutation. So we have this mobility, which is why you have the relaxing going around your body now, so that this area can really nicely open up, and you get so much more space for Bubba to be born. So there are these acupressure points, and this is called L14. Sorry, no, it's called. No, L14 was your hand. This is BL32, not that none of these, any of these numbers matter. So it's kind of just above the bum crease. If you think that here's your bum, just above the bum crease. So you've got the bum crease coming up here. So just above that, and then out to the sides. So you're right on the sacrum, almost where these little knobs are here that you can see. And so you get your partner to be pressing into these, and it's good to be using the knuckles to get in there, because you want to be able to get in quite hard, either knuckles or your thumb tips. And this can be really fantastic as labor starts to commence, and it can almost help labor start to commence. When Bubba is pushing backwards here before they start to come forward down the birth canal, this whole area is filled with nerves. It can be very, very painful, and you can actually almost see the sacrum pushing out. So in some women, you can see this triangular shape kind of pushing outwards. It's like a dark shadow. So to have your partner pushing down, and what they can do is just start to, going from this top area here, start to push down little bit by little bit down the sacrum, almost as if they're encouraging Bubby to come down here and then start to come forward. So this can be a really a brilliant acupressure point for pain relief. So yeah, definitely for pain relief, and it also can help with keeping the labor stimulated. So down here, oh yeah, okay, so also around here, I've just written here that you can stimulate, you can ask your partner to not just go down, but also just stimulate in a circular motion. So quite a nice big circular motion around this area. So this is, again, this is all in your module. So you'll be able to see a picture of where this acupressure point is. Now, your partner, so this isn't an acupressure point at all, but it's a I think we talked about when we will talk about it more in massage module, but they can get their hands like this and kind of push inwards. So on the back of the pelvis, when you're standing like that, they would get their hands behind you. You've got your bum like so, and they push in and slightly up. And when Bubby is not quite, yeah, I mean, you know, Bubby's a little bit further up still, but that action there can just help the sitting bones, everything to open up slightly. So it just helps the baby's head to get down, and can feel amazing to have some of the pressure alleviated. So it's a hooking with their hands, fingertips out, the heels of their hands inwards. This is quite a small pelvis, so I can't really get my elbows very wide, but for most women, the partners can be kind of like this, down, bending these, and then pressing in and up, and that can be an amazing alleviation of pressure and pain. Okay, so the last point that I wanted to bring to your attention, so I'm just sort of going over the main ones. This is called GB21, and this is a point that can stimulate uterine contractions. It's also a point that is brilliant for after you've had your baby, because it also stimulates oxytocin and the letdown reflex. So it can be very, very useful when you're breastfeeding. So you find it on yourself by taking your hand across your chest like that, and where your middle finger lands, it's about there. So it's literally halfway between the bottom of your neck and the end of your shoulder here. And if you're naked or you don't have a top on, you can see there's a little bit of a ridge on your shoulder, just where the point is. So it makes it relatively easy for your partner to find it if they're sitting behind you, for example, and nice for them to use their thumbs on this point, or maybe even their elbows. Again, just like this point here, it's really like, oh, when you find it and you push down, it's a zingy kind of electric, not comfortable feeling at all. But bizarrely, when you are in labor, it can feel amazing. Right now, I've got my hand on it right now, and it feels horrible. But when you're in labor, to have that kind of deep pressure on this point, because it's so connected into the uterus, can feel really fantastic. And people describe that they want it to be really strong pressure. So I've known about partners, if somebody's sitting who've been pressing down with thumbs and even getting elbows and pressing down into these points, and the pressure increasing as the contraction increases, and then the pressure dropping off as the contraction drops off, like that wave. So again, helpful if you're doing your vocal toning and you're sending that vibrational sound down, you're visualizing that cascade of relaxation over the uterine muscles as you're having these acupressure points pressed at the same time. So I think that the hang on. Okay, sorry, I wrote a note here saying this one can be very useful if you are fully dilated. So you've gone through transition stage, you've gone through that 20 to 25 contractions, which are the hardest bit, where most women will be like, give me the drugs, and really, losing the plot. It can be very helpful if you are fully dilated, but there are some problems with pushing. Yeah, if something is not working well, then this is where the oxytocin is really stimulated. So this can be a good point to be pressing, reminding your partners to press in here, right as you're getting ready to push, right at the very end. So you're fully dilated, you're in your position where your pelvis is as open as possible. Maybe you're kneeling, maybe you're squatting, you might be lying on your side if baby's coming too fast, but any of those positions which are helping your pelvis to open and for the tailbone to be able to be freely lift, that can be a good time for your partner to also be doing this one here. So that's pretty much it for the acupressure points. So I thought I might just ask you guys if there's any particular questions you'd like to ask about those acupressure points, or indeed if there's anything else that you'd like to talk about tonight.
So are these ones to help with the pain relief, or help to actually stimulate, or I guess, as you know, for me, I'm doing it all early anyway, kind of, booked in for induction 38 and a half weeks, which I suspect, I don't know, I'll try all sorts of things in the run up to it, but assuming that they don't work and it ends up being on the drip or whatever, then are they to kind of ease the pain, or just help you to manage
the thing is, unless your body is ready to give birth, so remember it's the molecular changes in the baby's lungs that are actually creating the cascade of hormones that start your labor, that start the uterus to slowly get ready to birth your baby. And so when you're having a natural labor, that happens over 10-14 hours, where you start with very, far apart contractions, or they just start for a short time. And that gives your body time to start to create the oxytocin and the endorphins to be able to cope with the contractions as they get stronger and stronger, and for your body to slowly open up. So these acupressure points, and same with acupuncture, can be fantastic for pain relief, especially those ones that I just showed you. So not the basing and the safe ones for pregnancy. They're not really going to do anything as far as helping to stimulate your uterus, but especially that Spleen 6 and the shoulder one here, which is GB21, and also the ankle pinching one here. Those ones can all be good for stimulating the uterus, so stimulating those contractions, but they're not going to stimulate anything unless your labor has already started. So I guess that's why, unless it's in a medical emergency, unless they're really worried about baby, the longer you can put off being induced, or even, maybe bringing to the table, what if they're so desperate to get baby out, do you talk about a cesarean birth instead of induction? Just in that the least ideal situation is if you are induced
and then end up with an emergency. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, which happens just so often, because obviously your body's not ready to have a baby, and so the external uterine muscles are massively stimulated, so you go from nothing to 100 very, very quickly, and often the cervix isn't opening, so you've got baby being pressed down. Baby doesn't also receive the kind of the signals that it's ready to be born as well, so often bub gets into distress. And so the hardest bit is if you have been laboring for a long time, so there's been all of that downward pressure on your pelvic floor area, and then having to go and have an emergency cesarean, or as is very often it happens, the pain becomes too much, and so you end up having an epidural and then a forceps delivery, which at the time, we just want to get baby out, obviously, but that can be quite traumatic. It can affect bonding with the baby, because the baby's obviously also absorbed the drugs, and then it can affect obviously the pelvic muscles if they have been traumatized with forceps or with an episiotomy down the track. So that's why I'm saying it's really worth finding out everything you can about induction, and making sure that you go to your care providers is it Royal Surrey or Frimley that you're going to?
Is it? Oh, I know. I'm going to. I'm in London, so it's.
Oh, you're London. Yeah. And it is. It's such an individual thing, and it's impossible for me as a yoga teacher to really give you advice. All I can say, if you want, I can send you some more articles about the difference between an induced birth and a non-induced birth, so that you have got a bit more knowledge around what questions to be asked.
I think what I've been, because we had this sort of long, big conversation with them, and although I'd already sort of initially, right at the start, before I knew about any gestational diabetes or anything like that, I said right at the start that either I would like a completely natural birth or an elective cesarean. And I was like, what I don't want is to end up again with an episiotomy and forceps and all the rest of it. And also because I had group B strep last time as well, so the infection was a horrible thing to
I'm sorry. Yeah.
So then but then the sort of diabetes and whatever kicked in, and also the age as well. They kept sort of stressing about it. So what I've kind of said, when they said that we think a vaginal delivery shouldn't be that difficult because you have done it before. So you could go for a C-section, but I sort of because my son is like, you know, he's just turned 3, and like I feel like, God, if I wasn't able to pick him up and stuff, and like there's a new baby and stuff, and also I'm the only driver in my household, and and stuff like that as well. And I just think from a practical point of view, it's going to be quite tough recovery. So I was like, okay, I'll go for the induction. But what I suggest, I mean, it's interesting because they were like, okay, so we could put the pessary in, and you know, if that doesn't work, then we'll go for the drip. And I was like, well, what about the balloon method then? Because you know, now they can put a balloon up to dilate your cervix. Yes. And they said, yeah, we can try the balloon if you want to. And I was like, because at least that's not artificial hormones. I mean, it might not work, but let's try it. And then I was like, you know, what about trying membrane sweeps? And they said, well, we can try membrane sweeps if you want to as well in the week leading up to it. Again, I don't know if it will work, but we might as well try. But it seems like their main goal, even with the pessary, is just to dilate the cervix enough to break the waters. And then
their number one goal is to get the baby out within a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard not to be. It's a system. And your body and what it's like in 10 years' time does not come into that equation at all.
I know.
Not at all.
And I said to them, I was like, the thing is, I know that's your goal, to just get a baby out as healthily and safely for the baby as possible. But then how the mother recovers is going to impact on how that baby is then looked after. Not to then mention, you know, the chances of postnatal depression for a traumatic birth or delivery. But anyway, nevertheless, I think having made the decision, and at least now I know that I'm, you know, I sort of know what's coming. I know that I'm going to try the other things at the time anyway. They seem to think that breaking the waters in itself can start off contractions. I don't know how likely that is, but I mean, because if that happens, then hopefully you wouldn't need to go on to the drip or whatever. But I don't know, apparently that's what they seem to think would happen. Now,
well, fingers crossed. I mean, it is much more likely to happen, obviously, if you were going to go into labor pretty soon anyway, if your body was near going into labor anyway. The worry is that 38 weeks is still pretty early if you think that, you know, normal gestation is up to sort of 42 weeks. And as I said last time, you know, in France, you're not even considered full term until you're 41 weeks. In China, it's 42 weeks. So you're not even considered full term until you're 42 weeks.
Yeah.
So, and the average gestation of a normal pregnancy, second time, right? 41 and 5, I think, for the first pregnancy, and 41 and 3, I think it is for 2 or 3 for the second pregnancy. So if you think that 38 and a half weeks, that's, you know, 3 weeks potentially early. The only other thing I'd say is, have you talked to them about you going in there and being monitored every day, or if, you know, as much as they want, kind of thing?
Yes, but what they said is, because of my, I mean, I could, you know, I could have pushed for all of it, sort of thing, but also because their worry is that because the baby's size is quite big already, it's already the size that it's already at 36 weeks, it's the weight that my son was when he was born at 40 weeks, 40 and a half weeks or so. So yeah, there is a slight risk of shoulder dystocia or whatever, but which is not their bigger concern. It's more whether the placenta is able to continue to support a baby, particularly as it's getting bigger, because you know, 40, they say, is like the placenta's maybe not functioning quite as it would have done if I was like, I don't know,
29.
No, I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean,
whatever.
5 is still termed a geriatric.
Yeah,
great term, geriatric.
And also, I think the diabetes can also affect placenta function. And the thing, you know, I've got friends, a couple of really good friends with just some really horrific stillbirth stories that I'm just like, okay, just, I'll just be better to be safe than sorry, which I'm sure I'll regret at some stage. So I could have
Well,
gone.
everything is a weighing up, isn't it? Everything is a weighing up. And it also, central London's probably different as far as, you know, some provincial hospitals for ease of getting in and being monitored every day. Because I do know some mums who do that as a compromise when induction is being offered. But you know, what might help is to get an acupuncture appointment right before the induction, so a couple of days before, and maybe even 2 if you possibly can. So you have acupuncture with somebody who's specially trained in acupuncture for birth, and then you know, same thing leading up to induction day. Do these, so go into the module in the course and do these acupressure points, the points that are going to stimulate your uterus. And I do that one in particular because that's the oxytocin stimulating one, and that's what we want. And you know, doing a lot of visualization as you are squatting, as you're opening up your pelvis, as you're doing the rotational movement. And I would, if you can, the day before induction, if you can find a park somewhere with a swing, get on that and just and swing up and down, do your vocal toning if you can, and just get that baby's head basically stimulating the cervix.
Okay. And because I think was it you who was saying that the synthetic hormones, because they are all synthetic, it's not what your body is naturally doing. So that, I think, interferes with the endorphin production.
Yes, you don't produce the endorphins. So that's why doing things like acupressure can help, because you get a little bit of that gate theory of pain. And then, this is the problem. Your brain is not your pituitary gland is not producing the endorphins that you have when you are in a natural labor. So doing all the other things that you possibly can do, like your active yoga postures, you know, that can just help to get Bubby into a better position, can just help the uterus to mobilize better, to work better, to have like nipple stimulation that can stimulate your oxytocin. So any sex, basically, just, you know, getting oxytocin to flow naturally will help. Raspberry leaf tea, I don't know if you've been drinking raspberry leaf tea, but that can just help tone the uterus. So it might be worth making quite strong concentrated raspberry leaf tea, and in the days before your induction starting to drink a lot of that. Make sure you stay hydrated when you first go into labor. So make sure that you're, you know, if you do end up having to have a cesarean, you just want to make sure that you stay hydrated before that, and just little bits of food. I think having the acupressure points is
Sorry.
Oh, hi.
I think we will be done in like 10 minutes.
Yeah, and I think we're pretty much.
Actually, we can wait.
Okay.
So you have to get a bus. It doesn't go direct there anyway. So.
All right then. Do you want to?
Okay.
Sorry.
Oh, come on, no, come on, this way.
Sorry. They're about to go.
Yes, you're getting ready to go.
Sorry.
So, I know. How about Laura and Charlie? Do you have anything?
I was just going to say, I can say it quite quickly. It's really interesting having heard all of that from you, Fahira, because I had a very similar thing. I had forceps, episiotomy, and an infection on the first one. Now they're saying, because I asked with the listening service, we went through it a lot, and I was examined by a perineal midwife, that, you know, it may have been that, you know, dehydration and sheer exhaustion led to that, but also a decompression. I was 41 in March, so I'm probably older than you. I'm going to do everything I can to avoid induction if I can, but I totally understand what you're saying, because they frighten the life out of you with the stillbirth stories, and I think that's the problem. And I think that they, you know, with my first baby, they didn't do growth scans because I'm 41. They did a growth scan, and they said that one part of the baby's body is bigger than the other part, so they want to test me for gestational diabetes, even though I have no symptoms of it. I have to have the test. So I think it's really hard. And I just wanted to say I totally understand how you're feeling, because it's almost like a similar story. But my sister-in-law had an induction in October. One thing she said to do was, if you get a choice between rods and gel, go for the gel. It doesn't hurt. It's more natural. It's new. I don't know what the gel's called, I'm afraid.
Rods, did you say?
My sister-in-law had rods put in her in October. She had her baby. And I won't tell you about that because it's pretty horrid. But after that, they put gel in, and that really worked. So that's.
You know at what stage? How many weeks she was?
She again. This is crucial. She was. Yeah, it was a few days. I think it was a few days before. But she says now she doesn't think the baby was ready to come. But she had gestational diabetes, extra amniotic fluid, and they just told her she had to have it, and she didn't argue at all. She didn't have any weighing up or discussion. She just did it. And her first 2 labours were natural and very fast. One was a water birth. But one of the other things I find, and I want to give Charlie a chance to speak as well, so I'll just go really quickly, is that for me personally, they changed my due date by a week. So I'm due, according to my date's 21st of July, which I think is nearer. They've moved me to 14th of July. If they want to argue about induction, they'll be trying to do it the 7th of July. And it'll be so early.
When did they change your due date and why?
They changed them at 12 weeks. And I argued that my husband and I are taller than average. Last baby was 8 pounds 2. I argued my point, and so now my whole pregnancy dates have been based on this one senior sonographer who is retired, who's come back, who's probably excellent, but it's all in what she says, and I'm still going by my date because last time they were nearer. So
Yeah,
I don't know what they've
it
done.
is a very, very difficult thing because you're juggling. You're juggling lots of different opinions, and of course we defer to the people in the white coats. Of course, we trust, but it is a system. It's a system, and the best thing you can do is just become as informed as possible. Read as much as you possibly can so that you are able to state your case. I think it really helps to take your partner with you when you have meetings as well. I don't know why, but they tend to, if there's a partner there, if there's a dad there who's able to be supportive and be not kind of bullied, because sometimes it can be a little bit of almost feeling like you're being bullied. That seems to help as well. It's, these days 38 is the average first birth in the UK now. So everybody is a geriatric mum. And I haven't heard of almost anyone who hasn't been told their baby's too big, not growing properly, or too small, or you've got gestational time. I mean, literally, it just seems to be across the board. And invariably, the baby's born, and it isn't massive at all. And when I look at, I think about my son is 15, turning 16 this year, and he hasn't hit puberty yet. And there are boys in his class who look like grown men with beards and stuff, so, and it can happen when you're 12 and 13, can't it? Some girls look completely developed. They have been having periods for a couple of years, and other girls still look like they're 8 years old. So at all stages, human beings develop at different rates and are different sizes. And for the medical system to put an arbitrary, this is when we have decided that you are old or you are young, and this is where we have decided that all babies should be born by the state, and then this is big and this is small. It's just, it's really quite crazy. Obviously, if baby's in distress, if there is a sign of the placenta degenerating, then that's another thing. And I would say maybe that's a case for going for a cesarean. there does seem to be real trigger happy, we'll just induce, and not really thinking about the cascade of intervention that almost always happens afterwards, unless your body is right on that point of going into natural labor anyway. So it's up to every single person, and obviously there will always be, you know, I had a situation where I was going for a VBAC after an emergency cesarean, and I was told, you know, you need to be ready for the fact that you might kill your baby, your uterus might rupture. I mean, the languaging was so horrific, but this obstetrician who said it didn't know me, and they didn't want to have the hassle of a VBAC. Didn't want that. You know, luckily for me, I had a midwife. The senior midwife came and she got wind of this, and she came and she just went, "That should never ever have been said to you. That was a terrible thing to say. And you know, you're already in hospital, and should anything happen, we'd get you into theatre straight away." And she was like, "In my 30 years of being a midwife, I've never actually seen it happen. So the chances are so small." And when that, you know, you're throwing statistics, so I was like, you know, double the risk of killing your baby. That was the terminology that was used. And actually, the percentage was 0.02. I can't remember, something like another 0.5% out of 1,000 that could happen. So very, very small percentage. So it's similarly worth knowing the languaging and knowing the actual statistics, and then having all the facts and feeling into your body and feeling into your baby and feeling, you know, you can kind of feel when you're ready, when the baby's ready, your body feels ripe and ready. Does it feel like that or not? But having a strong advocate with you, your partner being a strong advocate, and both of you going fully armed with information and feeling strong in yourselves is quite important, I feel.
I think what's helpful this time is that at least I know that that's what it is, so I can start preparing that, you know, in the run up to it. Like, I've made a decision and I'm quite comfortable and I'm feeling almost quite positive about it, because I sort of know what to expect. At least, you know, in some ways, at least it's not going into spontaneous labor and then they decide that, oh, this problem's happened or that problem's happened and now we need to suddenly change course or change tack. This time at least kind of yeah, at least I can sort of prepare. And also I didn't do this course last time or the hypnobirthing. I just didn't have any kind of knowledge, like the sort of stuff that I've learned from this. So
the pre-warned is so pre-armed, isn't it? And you know, like I said at the beginning of the call, the other three who've just birthed recently, they all said that the vocal toning was absolutely instrumental. And I've never taught anyone who hasn't really used that. So it really works. And if you have got strong contractions, then, you know, get into the positions that take baby off the cervix, use your vocal toning, that low vibrational sound. That in itself, I mean, if you guys just practice now, noticing, you know, we've just been talking about quite emotional stuff, so you're probably feeling a little bit discombobulated. If you now just we'll do 3 buzzy bee breaths to just kind of wrap things up. And I'm going to get you to, on the back of your nostrils, you breathe in up through your spine, like you're breathing up through the center of the fountain. And as we do the buzzy bee breath out, just let that flow down. Remember, the jaw and the pelvic floor are deeply fascially connected. So the looser you can get this area, the better. The shoulders are where all the oxytocin is stimulated. So we've got lots of oxytocin receptors around the back. So imagine as you let the sound come down, it's massaging over the shoulders, relaxing them. And then we want these 2 layers of the uterus to be able to flow, other way, to be able to flow over each other nice and smoothly. So again, feeling like that second part of the fountain, the sound is just pouring down around you and through you. Okay, so we'll try 3 of those together. All right, so breathing in. How do you feel now?
Yeah, you do feel everything just sinking down.
Yeah.
Just chill. You know, the vibrational sound is, it just does go through all the water of your body. So, and the kind of the stronger you can make it, the more sort of pushed out you can make it, and the longer you can make each exhale, the more potent the effect. So yeah, look, I would go and what, you know, oh, the other thing I must remember is when you're induced, obviously you're going to have to be monitored the whole time. Ask if you can have an internal monitor so you can still move around a lot. Did I mention that before?
I think so, the one that goes on the baby's
yes, yeah. So you know, that will just help you not feel like you've got a, you know, you're attached so much, and will just be one less thing to.
Or a wireless one, I think they've got as well. The wireless ones.
So that's it. That's the wireless monitor. So they'll be able to just literally put it into up through your cervix, and then your wireless, you're able to move around freely. Also, they might have one that if it's comfortable enough around and it's all Bluetooth, yeah, that might be what they've got.
Are you doing next Sunday then? Because I think it's Saturday weekend.
It's a bank holiday, isn't it? Yeah. What are you guys doing? Are you away at all, or are you around?
I'll be around. I won't be around the following Sunday because that is the day I'm getting induced.
Round.
You're around as well.
Sure, actually, I think that might be the 2nd of May. I'm not sure if we'll be back. We're taking Arthur to his first sort of farm experience.
Oh, gorgeous!
I'm not sure.
Lovely. We're just talking about maybe going away, but I'm thinking that we'd probably come back sometime on Sunday. But what I would do, if we don't do it on Sunday, I could make it maybe on the Monday afternoon evening. How would that be for you guys?
The Monday would be fine for me. If we just do that, and then at least you know that you've got the Sunday clear if you're going to go.
Yeah, should we do that then? Yes, I'll be teaching that night. But if we made it still the same kind of 5 o'clock kind of time.
Yeah, it works.
That works? Cool. Okay. Well, we'll do that then. Wonderful. Well, do go back and have a look at that. You know, the module if you can, and just sort of go over everything, and yes, come if you feel like you need to ask me any questions, do just send me an email, and you can always come with questions next time as well. But have a lovely evening, guys.
Thanks, Linda.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Take care. Take care, lovely.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.